Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Make sure the streams are going. Make sure my audio is working. It seems to be working. What about this stream and that stream? Is that right? Is that the one? Yep, that's good. And then finally, YouTube. It is live. YouTube is live. All right. Hey, good morning. It is 8 a.m. on Thursday, the 20th of February, 2025. And welcome. My name is Keith, and I am here as your daily hang when you are getting out those jobs, applications, looking for a job in tech. The streams Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. And we look at what's going on, job trends. We also take a look at the news that may or may not impact the tech industry and business at large. So we're just hanging out, answering questions, chatting, talking about what's going on in tech. And boy, has it been a bit of a roller coaster this year so far. You know, we had quite the bump coming out of the election. Businesses in general thought this administration was going to be business friendly. We see some hints of that in the news today. But we also see the uncertainty that has plagued the news lately about what the administration is going to do in terms of tariffs and layoffs and all kinds of stuff. And that uncertainty makes the markets a little nervous, a little uncomfortable. When the markets are nervous and uncomfortable, money isn't available to companies that they can use to grow and hire. So we'll take a look at that, talk a little bit about that. But welcome. Again, my name's Keith. I have been a professional developer for 30 plus years. The vast majority of that is in the web sphere, making lots of websites, web pages, web applications, creating, maintaining, in many cases creating, ideating. All in all, it's been a big job helping to usher in this internet as we know it today. Of course, it's in the middle of a change right now. Let's get into the jobs reports, the job numbers. So, if you're new to the channel, I check the job postings every morning, specifically for programming, for web programmers. You can write a lot of different programming languages and be called a web developer, but the one that is consistent is JavaScript. Clearly, you can write a back end in a dozen different languages, but any web application is generally going to have some JavaScript in it. That's the language of the web. It's the language of the front end. And it's a good stand-in for kind of where the industry is going. If more JavaScript developers are being hired, in general, that means that the web is growing. If less are being hired, we can be in a momentary disruption, or it could be a trend. And that's what our goal is, to look at this. I get my data from Indeed.com. And I look at data for entry level, mid level, senior level, and across the whole U.S., both in-person jobs and remote, and that gives us a good cross section of kind of where the industry is going. And I've been doing this for over 900 days. Um, Certainly these graphs that you're seeing right here. And from that, we can see real trends, right? The first graph here, you can see in the upper left, is the last 7 days. It's averaged out. We're seeing a slight dip, just a, within the margin of error kind of dip, although it did drop in the last 24 hours. So, does that mean it's going to continue to drop this going into the weekend? No telling. We'll see. But 2 weeks ago that was up and to the right, along with this 6-month graph. So there are definitely fluctuations that have happened within this. But when you look at the larger time frame, that's kind of what we want to see. And in some ways, the last 6 months is sort of the sweet spot. We see an up and to the right trend there. That's what we want to see. The numbers for the last year have been, again, pretty flat. Just a slight downturn. But certainly as we get through the spring, hopefully our spring numbers will be up, and these will fade, and we'll start to see that turnaround too. I have been tracking data all the way back to 2022, and in some ways looking at the longer trends is not helpful at all, just because of the nature of sort of what the world looked like coming out of the pandemic. So we're going to sort of focus on these kind of numbers. Since the first of the year, I have been slicing that up and getting more granular numbers, which includes like all of the U.S., not just entry-level positions. And, again, up and to the right is what we want to see. But in the last 6 weeks, it's been pretty flat, right? The red line is for remote work. The remote work still trending up. It's good to see. Because, remote work you can get from anywhere. So we have students in our school that have, been living in Lubbock, Texas, not a large town in Texas, and not one of the top 5 towns in Texas. And they, can struggle to find work in a smaller town. It's not a small town by any means, but it doesn't have the same kind of industry as a larger city. And it would be harder for them to find work. But post-pandemic, having all these remote work positions out there, that just opens up the possibilities, right? They can not only look for work locally, but they can apply for those jobs in Des Moines and St. Petersburg and San Quentin. Lots of places where you can pick up remote work. So that number is kind of important. We want to see that number continue to climb, even with these return to office mandates for large companies. I think medium and small size companies have continued to embrace the remote work. Again, at a small scale, that can kind of work because you can be choosy about how you hire. You can hire people on a 6-month contract remotely, and if they don't work out, you part company. You don't pay them benefits and that kind of thing to kind of give them a test run. But then as soon as they've proven that they can manage their own time and be productive in a remote environment, you bring them on full time and they get benefits and all that. We see that happen in medium to small size companies because they can manage that stuff a little bit easier than if you've got 30,000 employees, 50,000 employees, right? It's much too challenging. Jamie Dimon was shooting his mouth off this week about that particular topic. He doesn't want remote workers anymore. And he says that there's too much abuse in the system. And this is going to be the case with a larger company. If you've worked at a large company, I've worked at Dell, um, uh, I've worked at National Instruments, I've worked at a company called Bazaar Voice in Austin. Large companies, with any large structure comes a lot of inefficiencies and the ability to kind of hide in the mess. Things tend to go a little bit slower. I was reading a LinkedIn post about a Google employee who said she only worked 25% of the time. And, sure, the larger the organization, the more you can there's more cracks to kind of fall through and hide in. But small companies can, take advantage of that. Not have the cost of a large office, not have the cost of the all the stuff that goes with the large office. So yeah, it's interesting. So mid-level and senior level in-person numbers, again, up and to the right. That's what we want to see. These numbers are since the first of the year, since January 1. But that number just keeps flattening out. It was like a rocket ship the first 2-3 weeks of January, and then it's fading. But remote work, again, there's actually been a pretty nice trend up there this last week. There's been a bit of a dip, but again, there's always going to be some up and down variation in this. But that overall trend is good. And of course, mid-level roles are going to be more plentiful than entry-level and senior-level roles. Just the way things go. All right, so that is where the job numbers are. Again, I look at them on Indeed, primarily because I can use these filters to get down to that granular level. And you, of course, should be using the filters too. Most particularly, the most important one is this last 24 hours. Use that filter. Look at the most recent jobs, because we want to be at the top of the stack, right? Companies get lots of applications, and if you're applying for a job that's a week old, they're never going to look at your resume. It's not going to happen. They'll find somebody else in the stack before they get to you. So that is a waste of your time. So we want to be smart about our time and figure out the system. Use it to our advantage. I am on LinkedIn every day, multiple times a day, multiple days a week, every day of the week. And reach out and connect me. I've got a link on the page here, and always looking to connect with the larger tech world. People put in tech looking for jobs, programmers, data scientists, people knowledge workers in the tech industry. And if you happen to be in Austin, either because you live here or because you're traveling here for South by Southwest in just a handful of weeks, maybe we could connect. South by Southwest, a big tech conference that happens in Austin, Texas every spring, around spring break. And I am putting the finishing touches on an app for free events that happen during South by Southwest. The app's basically done, but I'm just loading the data in now. Got about 60 events in the application. They've got about another 150 to go. There's a lot of free stuff going on around South by Southwest. So I'll be adding that data every day between now and when South by Southwest starts. So if you have to be in town, or if you're coming to town, I will be announcing as I get closer that application. And of course, it's a free application, so it will be your hub to figure out what cool stuff's going on in our town. Let's check the news. What's going on in the tech world, the greater tech world? Microsoft deploys a new state of matter in its first quantum computing chip. I watched a number of news stories about this yesterday, including the release video from Microsoft. And this technology is so different and so new. They spent all the time kind of talking about what quantum computing is and why this chip is possible now and it hasn't been before, and what it, what the possible uses might be for it. But they didn't spend any time talking about, like, how do you code for this thing? We programmers have been raised around this idea of on and off, yet true or false, and that's not the way quantum computing works. It's not a binary system. So how do you write code for something like that? I got no idea, frankly, and nobody is really talking about that, which is kind of interesting. They're so focused on the technology aspect of can we do it, but the details of, like, what you do when it shows up to program for it, I've not really seen anything on that. I haven't. Maybe I need to do a little searching for that day. There's probably somebody out there who's made a video about it, but I have not haven't seen it, and it's not in there yet. But there have been a lot of technology, like fundamental technology stories lately. This is the latest one. In the last couple of weeks, we had stories about fusion. We got 2 stories of fusion reactors running for tens of minutes. I think one ran for 13 minutes, another one ran for 22 minutes. These fusion reactors, which I've been hearing about for all of my adult life. Fusion's going to be the way we power the future, and the joke is it's always 10 years away, no matter when you ask somebody. But looks like, maybe we're getting closer to a possible world where 5 years from now, 10 years from now, fusion reactors are powering our energy needs. And, cheap energy is the key to everything. Not only because these AI models and I'm sure the quantum computer models are just energy hungry, but everything takes energy, right? Pick up anything. My Monster drink here. It was, the can was made in a facility, and energy was one of the largest costs for it. Changing that raw material into something that can hold a fluid, taking those cans and filling them up with the ingredients, the mixing of the ingredients, all that takes energy. Packing it all up to be put into a truck, all that takes energy. Taking it from the truck to a warehouse facility, to a store, to you picking it up or being delivered to you and driving it home. And then it needs to go in the refrigerator, and the refrigerator takes energy too. Energy from raw materials, digging them out of the ground, all the way through to the energy to make that drink cold, a nice cold beverage. All that gets factored into how much this costs. And if you cut that cost in half of delivery and manufacturing and refrigeration and all that stuff, if you cut it in half, what does that do to the cost of everything that we have? Everything. I mean, again, there are environmental aspects which would be nice for fusion reaction. Absolutely. But the main thing is the cost of making a thing would go down considerably, maybe 40% cheaper, 30% cheaper. And if there's competition in the marketplace, which there isn't always, and we'll talk a little bit about that today, but if there's competition in the marketplace, that means the price goes down, right? And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. That is not a bad thing at all. The world gets richer. So, looking forward to with all the uncertainty in the world that AI is creating, and what jobs are going to be here in 10 years. I've got a kid in college right now, and another who's a senior in high school, and what they're studying and how they're preparing for a world 5 years from now or 10 years from now. Lots of unknowns, right? Lots of unknowns. But I'm very bullish on technology in general, and the changes that are coming. Healthcare is going to be greatly improved by these new technologies, and I'm on the backside of 50, so anything I can do to keep and stay healthy longer is something I'm interested in learning about. So let's talk about this is not really a tech story. We had a number of high-profile crashes recently, and I'm sure you probably saw the video of this plane in Toronto that landed a little bit hard, and their wing popped off and it flipped over upside down. Fortunately, nobody died. The responders acted quickly and put the fire out, but it was scary, I'm sure. Well, Delta, it's coming out to say that they're going to offer $30,000 to every person on the plane, and that is with no strings attached, like meaning they could still sue. But yeah, here's $30,000, and we're sorry. It's not a bad move. It's not a bad move for their point of view. For a large company like that, 80 times 30, it's not. They'd spend more than that on law, on their lawyers dealing with this stuff, and to get out ahead of it, clearly to say, we're sorry, and get out and get into the news cycle, and help, appear to be helping the people who went through this ordeal. That's generally a good thing. I was my wife and I in the 90s. We were on a cruise ship, and it was our first cruise and last cruise. Spoiler alert. And we left from New Orleans, and it was in the Gulf. We were going to be sailing for 2 days past Cuba, and we were going to stop on a bunch of ports in Mexico. And day and a half into the flight, into the trip, the engine caught fire in the middle of the night, and everything shut down. And that began probably about a 16-hour ordeal. Ship didn't sink, but it also didn't stand upright, because when they're under power, these cruise ships have a device in it to keep them from leaning in one direction or the other. But when the power goes out, that doesn't work anymore, and this boat just starts to tip like this. So it's about a 12% angle, 12 to 15% angle. And I gotta tell you, feels like that thing's gonna sink when you're inside of it. And happened in the middle of the night. All the power went out. It was a disaster. Like, it was just not good. Nobody died. Nobody died. But they didn't handle it very well as a company and an organization. And it was, like I said, probably 14 or 16 hours of a bit of a nightmare. We never reached one port. And when we got back, they offered us a free cruise in compensation. They refunded our money because we actually never got their services, and they offered us a free cruise. And my answer was like, but on what cruise line? Because we are never going on your cruise line again. Not gonna happen. So, it would have been nice to get $30,000 times 2. I'd have been happy with that. I wouldn't have sued them. Because, again, like, this is bad. There's nothing good about this accident. And this is going to leave people with some PTSD. They're not going to be jumping on a plane anytime soon. Absolutely. No doubt about it. But frankly, it all happened like at the end. They were landing. And, the whole ordeal of it crashing and turning upside down and getting them out into safety was maybe 30 minutes, So, again, could have been a lot worse. Could have been a lot worse. But it's nice to see they were on top of it. And they're just straight out the gate saying, look, we'll give you some cash. We are so sorry. Although lawyers probably won't say that. Get ready to discover Capital One merger could transform the credit card market. Ugh. So, the good news about the election is that business generally marked this new administration as being more business friendly, and they thought, we're gonna companies are gonna do better under this new administration. To some extent, that's working out, and other ways that's yet to be seen. We'll see. But one of the things they were complaining about all through the Biden administration was M&As were on hold. They were being scrutinized. Mergers and acquisitions were being scrutinized and not let to go through. So they were not. The government was not allowing mergers. In general, the Biden administration felt like mergers were anti-competitive, which more times than not, that's probably the case. And we, if you're, in charge of the government, and you want to put your thumb on the scale at all, putting your thumb on the scale in a way that makes more competition, not less, is generally a good thing, But businesses, especially in tech, like the opportunity for mergers and acquisitions because that's an exit for venture capitalists. So I have an idea for a startup. I put it out there. It starts to get a little bit of traction. I'm growing 30% week over week, month over month. All of a sudden, the VCs are like, hey, you could use some gasoline to put in this car and really supercharge your growth. Here's, $5 million. Here's $30 million. Let's go, man. We are off to the races. We're taking off. We're hitting our numbers. It's up and to the right, up and to the right. More. And that's great if you're running the company, if you work at the company. It's not so great immediately because if you're a VC, because the VC doesn't get paid until they go public or they're bought or merged with another company. That's an opportunity for a venture capitalist, an angel investor, to become liquid. Again, like if you invested a lot of money in Uber, for the longest time, it was a private company that was not making any money. And you had very few options for selling your stock. You could look at your stock portfolio and go like, hey, I was an early investor in Uber, and on paper, I'm worth tens of millions of dollars. But it's not cash in the bank. not until you have an exit of some sort, right? So, especially in the tech industry, with their cooling on mergers and acquisitions, it was more challenging for people who invest to get money back. And these VC firms, they're in the business of handing out money with the hope that in the next 5 to 10 years they get a big paycheck in return. Well, that was more challenging for sure under the Biden administration. And one can argue if that's good for America or not. Because again, especially in tech, VCs fund the growth of companies when they're not making a ton of money. Amazon famously didn't make money for 10 years. Uber didn't make money for many years. While they were not making money, they were growing and expanding their business, their operations. They were hiring a bunch of people, all on essentially the credit card of the venture capitalists. So is it good that the industry is growing, that more jobs are there? Is that good for the United States? Yes, generally, absolutely. That's good. If they're, it's just there's a lot of variables in there. It's challenging to sort of track that, but in general, for the consumer, we want choice. We want competition. All that is to say, mergers of Capital One and Discover, there's nothing good about that for the consumer. I mean, I have a Capital One credit card and I have a Discover credit card. Maybe, there's a benefit for me individually because I don't have to track these two things in two different places. But, no competition in the marketplace leads to less choice, and it's not as beneficial to the consumer. And when there are mergers, especially like this, when I was at Dell, we had that big merger. There's always redundancies, always layoffs. If you're talking about some grocery stores merging to take on Walmart, like there's an argument to be made that that's a good thing for the consumer. But when you're talking at this level, no, we don't want bank mergers. We don't want credit card mergers. This is not good. Not good. Also not good, the Fed is not ready to budge. Not ready to budge on rates. This is not good. We were promised last year that we're going to see 3, 4, 5 rate cuts in 2025. We saw 0 so far. And again, as I've been saying, when money is tight and it's hard to raise capital, either through banks, through SBA loans, or venture capital, because they can make more money in different places. Without easy access to capital, companies don't want to take the risk of growth. And the federal interest rate has a big effect on that. The interest rate's been high. It was low during the pandemic. It was basically 0 during the pandemic. And then coming out of that, it went up considerably. And we started to see a decline last year, which was good. But this year, everybody, again, uncertainty in the market. They're pointing to risks such as these tariffs that are out there, what the lasting effects of the tariffs are going to be. And so, again, when the Fed's nervous, when companies are nervous, they generally tend to circle the wagons and don't take risks. And when you don't take risk, you're not hiring a bunch of people, because that payroll is one of the bigger ticket items on your budget. So we'll see. I was really not wanting to hear this news. I wanted to hear those Fed's going to continue to cut rates. Maybe we'll see what happens with inflation. We'll see what happens with the larger market forces, but we shall see. What's going on in Google News and technology? Apple phone was announced yesterday. I didn't even watch the video. I saw a couple of headlines. I've not been an Apple phone fanboy. I've never owned a Apple phone. Almost all my friends do, but I've been an Android person. So I didn't really. I got excited when the M4 chip came out, and I'm so close to pulling the trigger on getting one of those M4 minis, but I haven't done it yet. My M1 mini, not pulling its weight anymore. Fighting below its weight class. And frankly, phones get very expensive, and they are touting this $600 phone as a kind of a cheaper model, lower price. $600. I'm not paying $600 for a phone. Most I've ever paid for a phone is maybe $300. Yep. I want to spend less time on my phone, not more time on my phone. Quantum computing stocks are surging again. We saw this too when the fusion announcements happened. The fusion stocks are surging again too. Like, all right, it's just a press release, guys. It's not ready to go into production yet. So we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, everybody wants to jump on a trend even before it's happened. Microsoft hosted explicit videos with this startup founder for years. Here's how she got them to take it down. Hosted explicit videos of this startup founder. Here's how she got them taken down. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what that's about. I hadn't heard about that one. NVIDIA. The news has been good and bad about those 50 chips. They're melting. They're hard to find. They're being scalped. They're breaking all the benchmarks. Lots of news and headlines about that line of chips. The world's thinnest foldable phone doesn't come cheap. $1,800. I mean, that's a good computer. That's a good, solid computer. Desktop computer. There's no way I would pay $1,800 for a phone. That's just crazy. It's crazy talk. What's the most you've ever paid for a phone? And of course, most people don't pay out of pocket. They just get on some plan where they're paying $37 a month for the next 5 years. But no, I've never been interested in that. Google removes Gemini from the Google app for iOS devices. Gemini app is now the only way to access Google's AI on iOS. Gemini is no longer available. The Humane AI Pen, a $700 brick of e-waste. Well, it's not going to take up a lot of space in the landfill. So there's that. They will stop working by the end of the month, they say. Yeah. Biggest ever AI biology model writes DNA on demand. Yeah, these are the kind of stories that are not going to make huge headlines, that will probably have the bigger impact over time. We're all arguing about whether we can get an LLM on our phones, and in the meantime, they're running these biology models that will be creating new life and creating new drugs and solving medical problems. That is where the real payoff is going to be, not just improving my emails that I send out. Microsoft unleashes powerful AI for video game creation. I saw a couple of these stories this week. I'm just not super interesting in this line of, I mean, sure something good's going to come out of it eventually, but I think it's A, too early in the process, and B, I don't understand what they think the end game is with that. I mean, other than creating better video creation models, because essentially that's what it is best case scenario, you're creating a persistent world that you can navigate around in. And if you can create a persistent world that you can navigate around in, then you can essentially create a virtual environment and then place cameras everywhere, and that could be a benefit to having creating a scene and then going in and placing a virtual camera here and virtual camera here and run it back and forth and record in a virtual environment the shots that you want. Like, there's a version of that sort of makes sense, but the idea of this idea that you're just going to create a game that will have all of the all of the sort of design choices that make good games really good built into them, I'm very dubious about that. Very dubious. But it is an interesting, when we first saw those Doom videos where you were running around the Doom, but like if you turned around, it didn't look like it was when you were just looking at it. You do a 360 and it constantly is changing because it's not persistent. Interesting. I just don't know long term what the goal is. So much goes into making a good video game that we've all played video games that looked really pretty and were just crappy games. They're not fun to play. Same thing is true with movies. Great looking movies, but boring. Layering that aspect into what makes a good video game, what makes a good movie, is it's going to be a lot more challenging. Download your Kindle books. We were talking about this yesterday. Next week, Amazon is stripping away your ability to download your ebooks. Stripping away your ability. Yep. Interesting. How are we doing on time? Got about 15 minutes. How are those job apps going? Getting out those job applications? That's our goal here. It's just to be a hangout, be some voices to listen to, something to play in the background while you're getting out those job applications. What's going on in computing? Yeah, here's another one of those stories that came out in this last week. Teleportation breakthrough for quantum computing is here. Beam me up, Scotty. Always the beam me up jokes. Intel alumni raised $21.5 million for a computing startup. Yeah, and look at this motley fool. Once in a lifetime buying opportunity. This quantum computing stock looks. Could investing $10,000 in quantum computing leader make you a millionaire? They just a bunch of lemmings, all spooked or chasing the little red dot around. The international AI race needs quantum computing. What does that even mean? We don't even know how to program for these things. I don't know how to make hello world in a quantum computer, much less write an AI model that runs on it. Like, that doesn't make any sense. We need more info about that. Feel free to educate me. Send me some links. Oh, so, this is interesting. We hadn't heard about the rabbit in a while. The AI pin just went belly up. The rabbit, which launched by all accounts too early. Maybe there's something still there. I hadn't heard about it. They kind of went quiet again after their less than stellar launch. Microbiology testing, yeah, that's good. AI on demand. DNA on demand, I mean. Use Lens to search your screen while you browse on iOS. Google AI results. Google makes visual search tool available for iPhones. That Lens button annoys me. I always hit it by accident. And I don't think I've once hit it on purpose. Alibaba stock soars after beating the earnings. It's all about AI. AI could save lives, transform pandemic preparedness. AI could boost pandemic preparedness. Intelligence for modeling infectious disease epidemics. That's all good news. Google's new AI generates hypotheses for researchers. Well, at the same time, we're seeing a bunch of stories about, AI slipping through hallucinations into research papers all the time, on white papers and stuff. Like, hey, somebody used AI for this, and they just made up stuff, and they included it in their paper. Google unveils AI co-scientist to supercharge research breakthroughs. Again, trust but verify. Is the information it's giving you verifiable? Trump team plans mass firings at key agencies for AI and chips. Commerce agency to order mass firing of chips and AI staffers. That's new. I hadn't seen that story. What's that all about? World and human action models towards gameplay ideation. Xbox pushes ahead of a new generative AI. Nobody will want this. Developers say nobody will want this. Yeah. Okay. New artificial intelligence revolution is coming. 3 stocks to buy before it changes the entire industry. My AI agent. This AI stock could be the best investment in a decade. Aye, aye, aye. Trillions of viruses live in your body. AI is trying to find them. Okay. AI trainer can make up to $30 an hour. It's perfect for an introvert. AI trainer. AI has a potential gold mine and a ticking time bomb. Yep, it's both. The hatchet can cut or kill. But this is the way of the world. How are we doing? 10 minutes. Okay. How hackers manipulate agentic AI with prompt engineering. I'm talking a lot about this lately. A lot of stories in the news about breaches and viruses. They seem to be on the rise with these new tools. When AI thinks it will lose, it sometimes cheats, study finds. Well, what was it trained on? It was trained on humans. And what do humans do? Sometimes they cheat. So yeah, that doesn't seem out of the ordinary. FDA layoffs could shift AI regulatory burden to health systems. Love is Blind should make men date AI women. Ay, ay, ay. I'm generally very positive about the future, but there are some stories will keep me a little worried. XAI video game studio make great games again. Elon Musk doubles down on the anti-woke gaming studio mission. I have many things to say, all of which I will refrain from. This is not one of those clickbait streams. You're not going to get a whole bunch of stuff out of me where you're clipping and promoting things. CEO forced smiles show the limits of AI-driven investing. All right. Better artificial intelligence. Are you conscious? A conversation between Dawkins and ChatGPT. Richard Dawkins on Substack. AI pioneer claims that existing systems are subjectively aware. Suffering is real. Yeah, consciousness is not. Yeah. What? My AI girlfriend is not conscious? What is going on in the world of business? The economy, jobs. What's going on in jobs? Republicans have gig worker rules in their sights again. San Francisco Chronicle. Exploring self-employment and entrepreneurship is a viable career path. There's a lot of talk about this. AI is going to lead to all these layoffs. And, it'll just be all these very capable people will find themselves out of work, and they'll just all start a bunch of businesses. And I started 4 businesses in the last 30 years. All of them ultimately failed. That ain't easy. It's just not easy. It's one thing to say, like, the coal miners are going to learn how to code, which didn't work out, by the way. It's another thing to say that, just because you were an employee somewhere at a company, that you could just go and start your own company. Yes, there are going to be some high-profile cases where that works, where somebody does take a chance. We're already seeing some of those, right? From the layoffs in the last year and a half. But they're going to be the exception, not the rule. Most people are geared towards being an employee, not towards being an employer. A lot goes into it, not just the physical ability to do the job. Right? What makes a successful company? Wesco joins military spouse employment program. Gen Z seekers returning to social media to find employment. Expert tips on making it work for you. Enforceability, restriction covenants. Youth employment rates declined for the first time since 2021. Both my kids have jobs. Again, my high schooler has a more traditional food service job, kind of the first job. He's been doing that for about a year. My daughter, she's taking a full load and doesn't have time for a full-time job outside it, so she does sort of contract work for a company. But it's not consistent. But she's a junior in college right now, so her full load is pretty all-consuming. Let's see. Village employment officer caught taking a bribe. Well, I think we're getting down towards the end of it. Let's recap the job data for anybody who's joined us later in the stream. I track all the job numbers. These are the job numbers for JavaScript developers, which are a good thumbnail for what the web industry is doing. And while generally these numbers are up and to the right, which is what we want to see, they've been very flat for the last 6 weeks. And we're hoping that will settle down and head in the right direction again, up and to the right. But in general, we want to see these trends heading in that direction. All in all, it's been worse. The last summer and going into the fall, the jobs were like a third less than this, 30% lower, 40% lower than they are right now. So we'll take the wins that we can, but we really would like to see these numbers double in the next 2 months or so. We have very little control over that, but we are going to track it so we can see kind of where things are. And this stream was created for people who are in the job search, looking to get their job applications out every morning and being consistent about it. And I just want to be a hang so that you can do that. All right, I'm going to wrap it up a couple of minutes early. I'm going to say goodbye to my wife. She's traveling today for work. But thanks, guys. We will see you tomorrow in 23 hours for our Friday broadcast. Thanks, guys.